Webb keenly eyed his man as he asked the question. "To-morrow or next day, sure, even if I have to go part way with the stage myself." "When do you want this money?" said Hay, tapping the envelope Webb had given him. "Well, now, if it's agreeable to you. I prefer to keep such funds at the quartermaster's." "Oh, good morning, Mrs. Ray," he cheerfully called, lifting his cap at sight of a young matron at an upper window. "Can you see them still?" he added, for the elder of the two boys was peering through a long telescope perched on its brass tripod upon a little shelf projecting from the sill. Many a time had the raised spy glass been the last to discern some departing troop as it crossed the low divide 10 miles away to the north. Many a time had the first announcement of "Courier coming" reached their headquarters through Master Sandy, the firstborn of their olive branches. There were unshed tears in the gentle voice that answered. There was wordless anxiety in the sweet pallid face that smiled so bravely through its sorrow. "The troop passed out of sight quarter of an hour ago, Major," said Mrs. Ray, "but Sandy could see the flankers on their left until within the last 5 minutes." "Way out on the left, Major," interposed that young gentleman, big with importance. "If old Stabber tries any of his tricks with that troop, he'll get his belly full." And Master Sandy plainly intimated both in tone and manner, not to mention the vernacular of the soldier, that Stabber might take his liberties with any other troop or company at the post, but he would best beware of Daddy's. And yet, not 3 months agone, he had stoutly taken up the cudgels for the Frayne garrison as a whole against the field, the wordy battle with the son and heir of the colonel commanding at Laramie culminating in a combat only terminated by the joint efforts of the stable sergeant and sentry, for both youngsters were as game as their sires. What Sandy Ray was now praying to see was an attack by Stabber's band upon the isolated troop, but Stabber, it may be said, knew a trick worth 10 of that. There was no sense in pitching into the sorrel troop on even terms when by waiting another day, perhaps, and the answer of Lame Wolf to the appeal of his speedy messenger, he might outnumber and overwhelm them with 5 to 1. "We should be hearing from Omaha and Laramie by 10 o'clock, Mrs. Ray," said the major reassuringly, "and I will send you word at once. And, of course, Corporal Ray," he continued, and now with martial formality addressing the lad at the telescope, "I can rely on you to report at once in case you see anything suspicious toward the Big Horn." "Yes, sir," answered the boy, straightening up to attention. Then, scrupulously exchanging salutes, the old soldier and the young parted company, and the major returned to receive the reports of the old and new officers of the day. These gentlemen were still with him, Captain Chew, of the infantry, and the senior first lieutenant for duty with the blank, when Hay came hurrying up the board walk from the direction of the store. For reasons of his own, Webb had sent his orderly to the guard house to say to the officers in question that he would await them at his quarters instead of the little building known as the adjutant's office, in which were the offices of the commander, the record room in which were placed the desks of the sergeant major and his 3 clerks, and the sleeping rooms of the special duty soldiers. It had happened more than once in the past that garrison stories of matters not supposed to be known outside the office had been traced back to that desk room, and now Webb's questions of his old officer of the day, and his instructions to the new, were not things he cared to have bruited around the post. He was listening intently to the captain's report of the sentry's observations during the night gone by when Hay reached the gate and stopped, not wishing to intrude at such a moment. "Come in, Mr. Hay," said the commander cordially. "This all will interest you." And, thus bidden, the trader joined the soldiers 3 on the veranda, and some of the young people of the garrison, setting up their croquet arches on the parade, looked curiously toward the group, and wondered what should keep the old officer of the day so long. Sauntering down the walk, smiling radiantly upon the occupants of the various verandas that she passed, then beaming between times into the face of her smitten escort, her black eyes and white teeth flashing in the rare sunshine, Nanette Flower was gradually nearing the major's quarters. She was barely 20 yards away when, in obedience to some word of the major's, Mr. Hay held forth 2 white packages that, even at the distance, could be recognized, so far as the outer covering was concerned, as official envelopes. She was too far away, perhaps, to hear what was said. "It seems," began Webb to his officers, as he mechanically opened the first packet, "that Field took fire at Wilkins's growls about the bother of keeping his funds. So the youngster stowed his money with Hay. He insisted on turning over everything before he left, so I receipted to him. Let's see," he continued, glancing at the memorandum in his hands. $372.85 post fund, and $400 belonging to various enlisted men. I may as well count it in your presence." By this time the long, lean fingers had ripped open the package marked 400, and were extracting the contents, a sheet of official paper with figures and memoranda, and then a flat package, apparently of currency. Topmost was a $5 treasury note, bottommost another of the same denomination. Between them, deftly cut, trimmed, and sized, were blank slips of paper, to the number of perhaps 30, and the value of not 1 cent. With paling faces the officers watched the trembling fingers slash open the second, its flap, as was that of the first envelope, securely gummed, not sealed. A nickel or two, and a few dimes, slid out before the packet came. It was of like consistency with the first, and of about the same value. Webb lifted up his eyes and looked straight into the amazed, almost livid face of the trader. "My God! Major Webb!" cried Hay, aghast and bewildered. "Don't look at me like that! No man on earth has ever accused me of a crime. This means that not only my stable but my safe has been robbed, and there is a traitor within my gates." Dr. Tracy, absorbed in contemplation of Miss Flower's radiant face, and in the effort to make his own words elegant, had no ears for those of others. He never heeded the trader's excited outburst. He only saw her suddenly flinch, suddenly pale, then his ready arm was round her in a twinkling. In a twinkling she twisted free from the undesired clasp. "Just my foot turned a pebble," she gasped. But, when all assiduity, Tracy would have seated her on the horse block and examined the delicate ankle, she refused straightway, and with almost savage emphasis, and with rigid lips from which all loveliness had fled, bade him lead on home, where, despite protest and appeal, personal and professional, she dismissed him curtly. Chapter 6